What'd you guys do this week? Anything fun?
Yeah, we had a boys' weekend.
Nice. That's one way to do it. I heard you had steak that like 9 hours ago.
Yeah, not a wise choice on my part.
Not a wise choice. My mic was still not on because I'm dumb.
Oh, so I've just been sitting here.
Yeah, you've just been sitting here.
Nice. They probably could pick it up a little bit.
Yeah. No, we had a boys' weekend. Steak 9 hours ago at basically midnight is a poor choice in your mid to late 20s.
That's fair. Well, I'm glad you're here. We're here on a nice Monday morning here in the Holly Mason building. This is the locker room.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good show again without Andrew here alongside me. But this is episode number 58 of the locker room, and not a great weekend for sports though. Have you guys been following along at all? Do you see what happened? Anything? All this bad stuff that's been happening, sports-wise?
I have not. I don't know if Vinny has, but he said he has.
So Seahawks lost.
I saw that
yesterday. Mariners lost on Saturday. Luckily, they won yesterday. Manchester City tied. Seattle Sounders lost. Washington State lost. Everybody lost. Everybody lost, and nobody won as far as my teams go. And that's all that matters. And
exactly, because you have the only opinion that matters. Actually, legally binding, I believe so.
Right. Yeah, this is my show, and I dictate what matters and what doesn't. That's the best part about having your own show, is I decide what matters, and what matters are my teams and nobody else. But that's okay. Everything's fine in this region as far as sports goes. Everything will be okay. But for now, it is pretty upsetting. You can find us, The Locker Room, on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts. But Spotify is the best place for podcasts, right? That's what we've determined.
Yeah.
I think most people can agree with that.
I would agree with that.
What it seems to be, at least. So we let's see, what do we have going on? Oh yeah, it's my birthday week. Do you guys know that?
It's your birthday today?
No. It's Thursday. Tuesday.
Happy
Thursday.
birthday to
you. Yeah, so
you.
Andrew's missing out on that, so that's pretty upsetting. He'll definitely owe me when we have this show next week.
Of course.
Because, the fact that he bailed on us, right? That's what I heard?
I do believe a kaiju has attacked, and he has the only knowledge of how to defeat it.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting.
I'll have to check in on that. We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah,
if we legally can.
You guys never sent me the LuckyBird stuff.
Ooh.
Go ahead and do that. I'll get to it here in a second.
Vinny says just wing it.
Wing it? You can do it. You mean how LuckyBird brand is an e-commerce digital marketing team? Just if you are looking to enhance your e-commerce strategy, head to luckybirdbrands.com. Actually, I don't think that is their website, but LuckyBird Brands is the place to go. Essentially, whenever I need someone to better my marketing, my strategy, and my needs, I go to LuckyBird.
You're doing a good job.
But actually, LuckyBird has a history of success in the e-commerce realm, in just bettering your company. And if you need to talk to somebody about your company and your strategy moving forward, check out LuckyBird. They truly are fantastic people, fantastic business with pretty much everything you could ever need. They have it for you. So
great job. Way to go.
Check out LuckyBird today. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Did you pull up any of these photos of these people by chance?
Totally, he says with pure confidence.
As he didn't do anything. That's okay. Like I said earlier, show number 58. So if we're looking at some of these past number 58s in Seattle sports history, a few that came to mind, D.D. Lewis was number 58. He was a Seahawks linebacker. Most of these guys were in the 50s, so pretty much everybody we've talked about in the last couple shows have all been linebackers. D.D. Lewis, Isaiah Kazavinsky was an old-timer. Then we're looking at getting a little bit closer. John Lotuelli was here in the Seahawks Super Bowl, number 58. And then most recently, Kevin Pierre-Louis, number 58, drafted out of Boston College, alma mater of Matthew Hasselbeck. Going to the Mariners, the best Mariner of all time, Jeremy Reed. You guys know I had a jersey of Jeremy Reed. He was number 58, but it was perfect because I was able to buy a jersey with my last name without being one of those guys who puts their last names on their jersees.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
I hate
lucky,
that.
Though.
I hate when people buy like a Russell Wilson jersey. Like they'll buy a number 3 and then they'll put like their last name on it. So like Vinny would put Davi on the back of his jersey, and it's like, come on, dude, you're not a player. right?
I mean, I guess I kind of get why people want it because it's kind of cool, but I also understand what you're saying where it's like, ooh.
It's just, I don't know. It's not pretentious because it's I don't know. It's just weird. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I'd rather have a blank jersey than anything. But I did have his jersey, and then Carter Capps, and then probably one of my favorite Mariners names of all time, Doug Fister, was a Mariners player, number 58
Classic.
for a few years. Really tall. He was like 6'8" or something. Played for the Tigers after the Mariners. But it is an awesome name. Speaking of Mariners, they're technically still in the playoffs, I guess. If you're still in the wild card standings with half of a month left to go, I think you can consider they're still in the race. Granted, they are 4 games back with 13 games remaining. So essentially, if they go undefeated, they would need teams to still lose 4 games before they could actually make the playoffs. So a really rough spot for them to be in at this moment. All of their games remaining are against the A's and the Angels. I do have someone hopping in here in the comments. Eric Bierkestrand. Yeah, not a lot of Bierkestrands in the NFL. So that is a good point. There is no one. Well, to be fair, if I remember right, he did have a cousin who played for the Cougars, so he could get a WSU jersey that has Bierkestrand on the back. So that could still count. So go ahead and do that, and you'll get a pass for that one. But very good point. Most of us are not too lucky to have decently common last names, considering the Seahawks currently have a DJ Reed, starting left corner on that defense. And then they also have a John Reed, which would have been perfect having the J Reed. Unfortunately, he spells it R-E-I-D like a cuck, so nobody cares about him. I think I should bring back that word. That word hasn't been used too much on the show recently.
Cuck?
Cuck, yeah.
Okay, you do you.
I think so. I think that needs to be done again. But there was a Jaron Reed. A Jay Reed was perfect, but he didn't want to stay with Seattle, so he left. So good riddance to Jaron. Actually, he was a decent player for the Seahawks, but still, if you don't want to play here, we don't want you. So going back to the Mariners here, like I said, they're 4 games back. They're competing for a playoff spot a year early than they were supposed to. It's nice to see. It's been a while since the Mariners have been able to say, yeah, we're still playing meaningful baseball here, almost at the end of September. The problem is it's not going to matter in the long run. This will be, though, fun fact. So this will be their 8th season with a winning record over the last 20 years, and they haven't made the playoffs in any of those. How frustrating is that? Is that frustrating to you guys? I mean, do you guys care at all? Sam, you were a baseball guy, right?
Yeah, I loved baseball, and that is incredibly frustrating.
Isn't that weird? Like they've had 8 winning seasons, which is a decent. I mean, that means they've won over 82 plus games 8 times in the last 2 decades, and they haven't made the playoffs in any of those, which is pretty frustrating, right? It's frustrating to me.
That almost feels unnatural.
It is. It's the Mariners. I don't know. It's their prerogative to miss the playoffs. I think it's just natural for them. If the Mariners make the playoffs, it's going to feel weird. The problem is when they do make the playoffs, I think the city might collapse. I think the earth might collapse on itself because it'll be such a change in the natural state of the world that nobody is going to know what to do with themselves. So next year, world ends when the Mariners make the playoffs. You heard it here first.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, write it down. They will clinch a playoff berth by September 1st. So put it in the calendar. September 1st, 2022, the world will end just because the Mariners make the playoffs.
You heard it here first.
So we'll still keep an eye on them. Still cool that they're competing. That's always nice to see. But chances are they will not be making the playoffs. So Washington State played this weekend. They are now 1-2 on the season after beating. They lost to Utah State in the first week, beat Portland State last week, and then they were outscored by USC 45-0 over the final, 3 quarters of the game, essentially. They took a 14-0 lead on USC, a very storied college football program who had just lost their head coach, fired him during the week, and WSU came out really good. I mean, it was really exciting to see them put together some pretty solid drives behind Jaden DeLora and Max Borghi. Unfortunately, as the case with Nick Rolovich and the Washington State Cougars over the last 2 years, they were not able to hold the lead. This is the 4th time in the last season and really 3 games now. I guess they only played, 6 games last year. So the last 9 games that they have blown, I think it's like a 14-plus point lead. And all of those times they were against decent-sized programs outside of Utah State. I think they did it to Utah. They just did it to SC. And I'm not going to remember the other one. We were talking about it this weekend. But that's a problem. When you've played, I think, like I said, I think Rolovich and the Cougs played 6 games last year, and they've played 3 this year. So that out of 9 games, they've blown decent-sized leads 4 of those times. I think that goes down to, a lot of it has to go down to coaching and the culture. When you had Mike Leach at the helm of Washington State, it just always felt like they were just feisty. Mike Leach had that side to him, and it just feels like these Cougs are just a little soft. They don't really have that. What's what I'm looking for? They just don't really have that. They just seem weak. They just seem like they don't have the backbone to stay in front of these pretty high-end programs. I mean, this would have been a huge game for them to actually make some noise, and they weren't able to do so. So moving forward, I think it's going to be a problem for Rolovich and his job security, because this is not what you're looking for when your head coach is the highest-paid public employee in the state. You expect to win football games, and they're currently 1-2. They're going to struggle against a lot of these Pac-12 teams coming up. I just don't see a situation where Rolovich gets out of this unless a huge switch in philosophy happens. And I don't know if that'll happen, considering Rolovich came from a Hawaii program where he had a pretty solid foundation and did things his way for a long time. So I just don't know if that'll happen. Some of my big problems that I have is Max Borghi touched the ball 13 times in this game against SC. Granted, they had to get away from the rushing game. I understand that. But he didn't have 1 catch in this game. Borghi's one of the larger, 3-down backs in the league as far as, he can do it all. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. That's never been a problem. A lot of people compare him to Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey touches the ball 30-plus times because of the fact that they give him a lot of work in the passing game. So that's one of my bigger problems, is that they're not utilizing their best offensive player, and that's Max Borghi, who will be playing in the NFL one day after this year, probably, and or definitely after this year. And they're just not utilizing him properly. The defense doesn't have a pass rush. The defense doesn't have any big time playmakers. They're just not really exciting to watch, because they again, when you watch Mike Leach coached teams, they always just had a different attitude about them, and you're just really not seeing that from the Rolovich-led teams, which is unfortunate, because I've actually, at the beginning, Rolovich seemed like a pretty good hire, and I just don't know if this relationship is going to work long term down in the Palouse. So not great for the Cougs. They had a rough go at it, but they play Saturday morning, 11:30 against Utah. Going to be another tough game for them. But it's again, if they get the ball to Borghi, that should be the game plan, and that should be the game plan every single game. So we'll see if that actually ends up happening. Since Andrew's not here to defend himself, I will point out the fact that I am leading the picks right now. No matter what happens during tonight's game, Packers-Lions. Right now, I am up 10-5 this week, and Andrew's at 9-6. We both picked the Packers to win tonight, so either way, I will be up 1 game on that guy. Kind of going over a few of the results this weekend. Very interesting week again in the NFL. We're going to look at some of these games. Washington was the one that happened Thursday night. Very interesting game, actually. It ended up being a really good game, considering it was like 10-7 almost at halftime. And Washington ended up pulling that one out 30-29 behind Taylor Heineke's 336 yards passing. Scary Terry led all receivers with 107 yards. It's unfortunate for both teams when the leading rusher was Daniel Jones, the quarterback of the Giants, who had 95 yards. Looking down the rest of the list here, the Bears won, so nice job, AJ. Bears took a 2017 win over the Bengals. A lot of quarterback injuries, and starting with this game, Andy Dalton went out with a sprained, or actually I think it ended up being a bone bruise in his, I think it was his left knee. Justin Fields came in, had a kind of an uninspiring performance, but again, he wasn't really practicing with the one, so you can't look into it too much. Burrow's still struggling, coming back off of that surgically repaired knee. It just doesn't quite look himself, so we might be a few weeks away until we see the Burrow of 2020. And not Next game also had a little bit of an injury scare. Baker Mayfield came out of the game between against the Texans that Cleveland ultimately ended up winning 31-21. Baker still led all passers with 213 yards. Chubb had a decent game with 95 yards rushing. Next game, we had the Rams and the Colts, and the Rams had to utilize a Matthew Stafford game-winning drive to win that game. Looks like a pretty good quarterback head coach pairing between he and Sean McVay. Unfortunately for the Seahawks and the rest of the NFC West, I think that Rams are going to be a problem, at least on the offensive end. Cooper Kupp had another big game, 163 yards through the air. Bills beat Miami 35-0. Josh Allen had a pretty slow game. This was a very strong defensive game by Buffalo. That doesn't say much because Tua is the quarterback for the Dolphins, who also came out injured, forcing Jacoby Brissett into action, the former Colts starter there. Not much happened in that game overall on the offensive end. Again, just a really strong performance from Buffalo. Moving on to the Patriots and the Jets. Zach Wilson had 2 interceptions his senior year at BYU. He has thrown 5 already this season as the starting quarterback of the Jets. Patriots win 25-6 over the Jets. 49ers had a lot of trouble with the Eagles, surprisingly, considering that the Eagles will probably end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL, depending on what Jalen Hurts does at quarterback for them. I just don't see too much happening with them. Niners did win 17-11, but their offense is still a problem with Jimmy Garoppolo dinking and dunking his way all over the field. We'll see if that continues this throughout the year. If it does, I think the Niners could struggle against some of the better teams. There's a lot of NFL games. Oh my! When you're up here alone doing 16 games, you realize 16 games is actually a lot.
Yeah, you were really going there for a second. You were on a roll.
Yeah. There's that. When you have Red Zone and you're just watching every single game, essentially, you actually get a pretty good feel for what's going on. Unfortunately, with that, you also have to go over every single game just to make it seem like you actually know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, Gianni, looking at the comments here on Facebook, Gardner Minshew is not going to be starting for the Cougs anytime soon. But that's a very good point. But you look at it again, Minshew was like the guy at WSU, a guy who they all were able to kind of stand behind, who had a really interesting character. Was just, again, kind of, it goes off of Mike Leach. Like, Mike Leach was a character and a half, brought a lot of energy to that team. Minshew brought a lot of energy to that team, and there's just nobody on WSU who you're like, that's the guy. Because Borghi is the guy, but they're not letting him be the guy. So that, while it's a joke, it's also pretty funny. It's also not. It's also a very good point. God, I hate my friends.
Good save.
You know that I hate my friends. They're all in the comments here. I love my buddy Josh Geiger. Do you know where I can get a siding window bid? They think they're comedians. Everybody thinks they're a comedian, and I don't know why. Decent joke there. Let's quickly fly through the rest of these games. Vegas beat the Steelers. Steelers offense is going to have problems this year if Big Ben can't stay protected. That offensive line is having a lot of problems. Raiders actually look semi-legit. That offense with Derek Carr is humming along pretty well. New Orleans is also going to have a problem on offense with Jameis Winston at the helm. We saw the problems when Jameis is forced into action and needs to carry that team. It's just not a good look. So that defense is going to be the most important factor on that team. Denver, Jacksonville, I don't really care about at all. Bridgewater had a decent game, 328 yards passing, but Jacksonville's a bad team, so I'm not looking into that too much. One of the better games of the weekend, Arizona won 34-33 over Minnesota. Should have lost, but Minnesota lost another game-winning field goal by they just have had kicker problems since Blair Walsh missed that kick in the playoffs against the Seahawks, and they really haven't found their kicker since. Kyler Murray threw for 400 yards. He looks like an MVP candidate at the moment. Tampa Bay won 48-25 over Atlanta. Brady has 9 touchdown passes already this year, so he is well on his way to another big season, which is insane and very frustrating, but good for Brady in his age 45 season. Dallas beat the Chargers 20-17. Herbert had a really big game. I'm surprised Dallas actually ended up winning this. They didn't look very good. I think a lot of people are looking at Dallas as being this offensive juggernaut, but I think we're still seeing the problems with Dallas. They just are not consistent. Another one of probably the games, actually probably the game of the weekend. Kansas City beat Baltimore 36-33. I should say that actually the right way. Baltimore beat Kansas City 36-35. Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbled with a minute and change left, essentially sealing the game for Baltimore. Baltimore celebrated like they won the Super Bowl because Lamar Jackson had never beaten Patrick Mahomes, so that was a big deal for him, but still was stupid. And now we get to the worst game of the week, Seahawks losing, which was just ridiculously brutal. They lost in overtime, the only overtime game of the week, 33-30. They let Ryan Tannehill throw for 347 yards. Derrick Henry ran all over them to the tune of 182 yards. And it was an all-time collapse for the Seattle Seahawks this weekend. The Seahawks were 52-0 when leading by 15 points or more at home. They were up 24-9 at half and ended up losing that game. So they are now 52-1 when leading by 15 or more at home. That hurts. That's a rough one. Not fun yesterday. Whenever the Seahawks lose, it kind of ruins my entire weekend. Actually, no, I'm still upset, actually. Let's be honest. I will not be happy until the Seahawks win again. My fantasy team won because Derrick Henry went off, and that's the worst part. I hate when my fantasy team does well at the expense of my team that actually matters. It was just, I mean, you look at all facets of this game, the Seahawks ended up losing. Their third down offense, they were like 3 for 12 on third down. The second half D was just tired, I think, of getting beaten up by Derrick Henry all game, and which is really surprising considering they came back home and they were in front of the fans for the first time since December of 2019, and the fans were riled up and they were going crazy, and it just didn't look like they really cared. They looked tired, and a lot of that has to do with the time of possession stats. If we look at the box score, it wasn't even close as far as the time of possession. Part of that was because they had plays of series of 5 plays, 3 plays, 2 plays, 7 plays, 3 plays. That 7-play drive was just a little over a minute there at the end of the second half when they were able to get that touchdown. So that one was also really quick. But the time of possession, when it's skewed 42 minutes to 22 minutes, when you have a guy like Derrick Henry who just grinds you down the entire game. He ran the ball for 30-plus times. Bobby Wagner had 20 tackles, which was probably the only good thing about this game, a franchise record for the Seahawks. That's a problem for sure. So, Tennessee scored a lot of points. They put up a lot of yardage. And I think when they think of Tennessee, they think of Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. They think of a grinded-out, low-scoring affair, just kind of game-managing quarterback. But in reality, last season, Tennessee was the second highest-scoring team in the NFL behind the Packers. So they can put up points on the board, so that's not a surprise. The bigger surprise is the fact that the Seahawks allowed them to get back in this game, especially at home, where the Seahawks have actually had one of the worst records at home over the last few years. They've had the best road record, but I want to say that they're in the bottom third of home records over the last couple seasons. So that's pretty frustrating when you think about how great of a home field advantage the Seahawks have. I don't know what happened with the offense for the Seahawks. Their only points in the second half was on a blown coverage play to Penny Hart. And everything else just looked sloppy. It looked slow. The offensive line was being tossed around, and that was with a decently healthy offensive line as well. They did lose Brandon Shell in the first half, but that was not the problem. It was just not the protection. It was just wasn't holding up. And the defensive line is a problem. Carlos Dunlap only played half of the possible snaps because they're trying to manage his load. They need another defensive tackle, considering Al Woods is out there on a consistent basis, which is fine because he played well, but again, he's an older guy who's not going to be able to play every single down moving forward. So there's a lot of problems that are happening with this team, and I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to be able to be fixed in practice, or if that's going to be just a complete change in mindset, because they gave the Titans 5 first downs on defensive penalties, which is not going to win you any football games. They did win the turnover battle. Pete Carroll talked about how it's his fault that the team isn't kind of lost their cool, and we're having all these penalties. But I think Jamal Adams and Kerry Hyder both said, this isn't on coach, this is on us. We're veterans. We should know better than that. Jamal Adams had a massive roughing the passer call that he didn't agree with, but he also understands that he can't put himself in a position to make the refs decide if that was a foul or not. Tyler Lockett had a good game, which is to be expected. His 278 yards to start the season is a franchise record, easily beating Steve Largent's previous record of 215 yards through 2 games. Like I said, Bobby Wagner's 20 tackles were a franchise record. They did sack Ryan Tannehill 3 times and had 8 total QB hits. The problem with that is that 2 of those sacks were in the first half, and I want to say like 6 of those hits were in the first half as well. So it wasn't consistent enough. There wasn't enough pressure coming in the second half. Jamal Adams wasn't able to get after the quarterback. The Titans did a really good job at stopping a guy who had 9 sacks last year, who still has yet to sack a quarterback this year. Derrick Henry had 182 yards rushing, which matches a previous high under a Pete Carroll coach team. Previous time that they allowed 182 yards was, who was that? I want to say it was Adrian Peterson. It was definitely Adrian Peterson. Also ran for 182 yards. Just a really frustrating game. It was expected that they would win. Titans looked really bad last week. Seahawks jumped all over them here in the second quarter. And, it was just a really frustrating game. Like I said, an all-time collapse considering the Seahawks had never lost a game at home when they had led by 15 or more points at any point throughout the game. And they did end up losing. So the Seahawks only had 17 first downs compared to the Titans having 33. A lot of that, again, goes down to Derrick Henry grinding out this game. Titans ended up having 6 total first downs from penalties. Seahawks ended up, like I said, only went 4 for 12 actually from on third down, which is just not going to do you any favors. So both had the same amount of passing yardage. Rushing yardage was heavily skewed toward the Titans. They had 212 total rushing yards. Seattle only had 77. Chris Carson had 2 touchdown rushes, but didn't really get much going on the ground. 10 penalties for 100 yards. Compared to only 5 for 45 for Tennessee. So really sloppy game, really frustrating game, one that is going to sting a little bit and hopefully does end up providing a little bit of a spark moving forward. Seahawks do play the Vikings next week, so they will have a good chance to hopefully get back on track. The Vikings have struggled so far this season, not winning either of their games. That game kicks off at 1:25 on Fox. At Minnesota, so we'll only $54 a ticket there. You guys want to head over to Minnesota next week?
I have family in the area, so sure, why not?
All right, sure. A show on site in Twin Cities. Sounds good. All right, let's hop over to jabronis. I have 3 of them. I decided to do 2 because Andrew wasn't here, and I was like, there's a third one that I want to do that I saw this morning. So we're going to start with the one that I saw this morning, and that's going to be Jackson Mahomes, the brother of Patrick Mahomes, who goes to all of his games. He's a YouTube influencer, big on TikTok, all that fun stuff. Really annoying. Don't like the guy. And there's also a reason why. Go ahead and take a look at this video that was posted to social media last night after the Chiefs failed to beat the Ravens.
I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry for you. Let's go.
So you saw that. That was Jackson Mahomes, again, the brother of Patrick Mahomes, who ended up dumping water all over the phone and the guy who was probably taunting him, which is, that's what happens, right? That's what happens at football games. You lose, you get yelled at, and you get made fun of. He's the brother of the arguably the best player in the NFL, and he couldn't handle a little bit of jawing, so he decided to dump water all over people. So he's a jabroni for that. That's just soft. He talked about I think he said on his social media he's tired of people bullying him, and it's like dude, you're going to these games. You should sit in a box, because if people find you, they're gonna do and say is whatever they want to say to you because of the fact of who your brother is. So what's also surprising is that Travis Kelce's girlfriend and Patrick Mahomes' wife were also sitting there. Neither one of them were like, hey Jackson, let's not do that because that's gonna come back on your brother in some way. So first jabroni is Patrick Mahomes' brother Jackson. Second one, this happened in the Seahawks game. A lot of people around sports media were talking about this. A lot of people on social media in general were talking about this play that happened. The new taunting rule in the NFL, which we mentioned a couple weeks ago, it has been not a big problem, and it wasn't really a huge problem in this Seahawks game. It didn't help their cause, but this happened to DJ Reed, big, I guess it's just a Reed thing, but ended up having a taunting call against him, and here's the play and the call itself.
First down. That's number 2's first foul in the category of unsportsmanlike conduct. He gets another foul in the same category, he will be disqualified.
So Tannehill threw deep down the right sideline to A.J. Brown. It was a little overthrown, decent coverage. He probably had a step on DJ Reed. The ball was dropped by A.J. Brown, and DJ Reed kind of, sort of stood over him and probably yelled I don't know what he yelled. But anyway, the official has been told by the NFL to call essentially any sort of taunting that happens when a player is on the ground, if you step up over him, whatever. Is that soft? Do you guys think that's soft?
That particular instance?
Sure, let's start with that.
It definitely seems weird. I don't know. The whole taunting thing I still think is kind of strange to begin with.
I understand, they're trying to prevent scuffles. You see a lot of times when taunting happens, someone jumps up and, they go face to face and then everybody circles up and they're trying to prevent that from happening. I understand that. But in that situation right there, I just don't understand again, he wasn't really standing over him either. He was still a couple yards away and just yelling at him. The same thing. I can't imagine the things that are even said and the fact that, that's where they draw the line is right there. They want them to celebrate with the fans and celebrate with their teammates and not celebrate at the expense of a player. I don't know. It just seems like the NFL, again, is getting soft in this regard. And most people are in agreement, especially with that play specifically, that the taunting rule goes too far. And I would tend to agree, especially in this sense. There are definitely times where I think a player is going overboard with the taunting, but I don't think that was one of them. So the official that called that and the head referee who agreed with that will be the jabronis. We have let's do one more here. Speaking of the Vikings missing that potential game-winning field goal, here is the Vikings radio broadcast during the game when that kick went up, the play-by-play announcer saying that the kick was good.
High snap, put down. Joseph, come on! It is good! No, he missed it. Good. Are you kidding me? He missed it right.
He missed it right.
Oh, my heavens.
Oh, my.
It's always unfortunate when your play-by-play guy goes wild that the kick was, in fact, good when it wasn't. So the color commentator had to say, actually, that wasn't good. And it wasn't even close, really. I mean, that was a couple yards wide right. And so that was pretty hilarious. It does happen occasionally. You just hate to see it. You do feel bad because that guy for sure is just going to get roasted all over social media. So don't make the wrong call. Just don't make the wrong call. On this day in sports history, 1933, September 20th, 1933. Pittsburgh Steelers, they were called the Pirates at the time. They played their first NFL game. They lost 23-2. In 1968, Mickey Mantle hits his final career homer, number 536. In 1985, this is probably my favorite one. Curtis Strong is convicted for selling cocaine to pro baseball players. Where have the good days gone, man?
That's a good question. That's a real good question.
That was
cocaine and baseball players.
Come on, 25 years ago, Curtis Strong just wanting to have a good time, just wanting players to have a good time. I think we should bring back cocaine and baseball players. No marijuana, but cocaine's okay.
That seems interesting, but sure, why not? Cocaine, steroids, let's go for it.
Perfect. And that actually is a great argument. Having steroids just run rampant. Let's go ahead and make that happen.
See how far we can actually hit a baseball.
Yeah, let's go wild here. Let's just let's make everything legal. 1987, Chicago running back Walter Payton scores his NFL record 107th rushing touchdown in the Bears' 20-3 victory over Tampa Bay. I've shouted out the Bears a couple times today, so that if AJ's watching, that I guess that's for him. Here, last segment of the show, closing time. This goes again. We're going to talk about the Chiefs-Ravens game one more time. It's fourth down in this situation, 4th and 1. It's in Ravens territory. Big decision to make for Harbaugh. He's never been one to shy away from going forward on fourth down. I think he goes forward on fourth down more than any other coach in the league. And last night, if they get the first down, they will win the game. And here's a video of what Harbaugh does. He goes out onto the field and he starts yelling at his quarterback, Lamar Jackson, and he asks him this question. We'll see if it comes through, but we'll go ahead and play the video.
That they go for this.
No, you don't. It's going to be one hell of a call, though.
This would be really rough.
So you can see him yelling. He's yelling, Lamar, do you want to go for this? Lamar Jackson obviously says yes because they went for it. And then he says, all right, let's go for it. And Lamar Jackson gets the design quarterback run, picks up the first down, they win. So essentially, this is only I want to say the second time, if I remember seeing the stat right, this is only the second time in the last 30 years that a team has gone for it on fourth down in their own territory with between 20 seconds and a minute left in the game. Anyone want to guess when the last one was? It was against the Seahawks. You probably won't guess. It was against the Seahawks. Rams went for it in 2018 in the same situation, beat the Seahawks, ended up not getting the ball to Russell Wilson. Essentially, the Ravens figured that they had a better shot of getting the first down than they did punting the ball to Kansas City and giving them a chance, and Patrick Mahomes a chance to drive down the field and win the game. So, pretty cool situation. I think more coaches should rely on their players' feelings as far as hey, can we get this? I think a lot of times the flow of the game, you don't quite get the same feeling on the sideline as you do when you're actively there. I think more coaches should realize that you actively trying to win the game is you better than trying not to lose it, and that's what we saw last night, and that gave the Ravens and Lamar Jackson their first win over the Kansas City Chiefs. So really cool for Harbaugh to do that. There's a reason why he's still in the NFL and his brother is coaching at Michigan. And I think Harbaugh will be here for the long haul for sure. So, yeah, not a bad show there. Nice job. Good job, Sam.
That's what do what I can.
Nice 36 minutes there. A lot of NFL talk. Actually, I do want to finish off the show with one more of our sponsors. I do actually have this read, so we'll finish off with them. And that's Windermere. Windermere Services Mountain East proudly services over 60 Windermere offices in Eastern Washington, Idaho, Eastern Oregon, and Montana. They are all in for their local communities. At Windermere Services Mountain West, relationships are the foundation of their business. Their mission is to be successful, team-oriented real estate professionals committed to exceeding expectations through exceptional customer service. They are Windermere. Windermere Services Mountain West is committed to the communities in which they live and work. They are all in for you. God, I hope next week when Andrew's back that I'm not sick again. This whole being sick thing is very frustrating. So,
understandable.
Yeah. I'm just up here, crawling my way through 37 minutes now of the show, but we'll get there. And Gianni, you can never come back into the fantasy league because nobody likes you, but it's okay. No, we did. Do you get in fantasy leagues?
This is the first year. In the last couple of years, I am not, just because the league I'm usually in, just enough people. I think we all kind of forgot that it was coming up, and by the time
That's fair.
Everything was going.
Do you like it usually?
Yeah, I enjoy it.
So I just won this week. I destroyed the week. I didn't destroy Eric. Eric actually had a good week as well. But the best part is each week, the highest scoring player of the week, there's 8 of us, the highest scoring player of the week gets $10 from the lowest scoring player of the week.
Ooh, interesting.
And remember Tim Wilson? He called in to try and win those shock tickets, and he didn't win them.
Yeah. I remember that.
Well, he got lowest score. He's going to get lowest score, and he gets to pay me $10. So thanks, Tim, for the free $10.
Yeah, you love to hear it.
You love to see it, especially when Tim pays me. That's the best news. And that actually is going to get my week started off right after the Seahawks failed to do that for me yesterday. So we'll see you here again next week. It'll be September 27th here in the Holly Mason building. This was the Locker Room presented by Spokane Talks. Have a good week.